I met the guy who did merch for Calvin and Hobbes, and he told me once about Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, with tears in his eyes. Now, he worked for AM Universal, the company that produced all the Calvin and Hobbes books and syndicated the comic strip. And he said to me, after I begged him to let me sell Calvin and Hobbes t-shirts, and I showed him all the bootleg shirts and how they were making millions, he told me, I don't want Calvin and Hobbes to be anything other than a comic strip. He went on, it's bad enough he won't let me make the t-shirts and sell them. He won't even let me sue the people who are ripping him off. I felt bad for the guy, and I felt bad for Watterson. Now, I was just a newbie cartoonist at the time, but I knew Bill Watterson, one of the most successful cartoonists of the 20th century, was making a mistake. He wanted to avoid selling out by offering ancillary products like t-shirts, mugs, and a Spielberg-directed animated film, which he also turned down. He believed limiting his exposure would make his work more pure and compel fans to remember his comic strip more fondly. Now, his comic strip is remembered pretty fondly, but what if he'd made a few t-shirts? What if he'd made a TV series or a Spielberg-directed movie? How many more people would remember his work fondly today? How much more deeply would it be ingrained in the culture? It might even be as fondly remembered as Charles Schulz's Peanuts. Schulz, one of Watterson's heroes, never shied away from merchandising. He made animated TV shows, he made movies, he plastered Snoopy on everything from t-shirts to beer cozies. He even let Charlie Brown and company shill for MetLife and Dolly Madison snack cakes. All this exposure made the Peanuts characters so popular that there's hardly a person on the earth who doesn't know them and love them to this day. They're iconic. They're timeless. By contrast, Calvin and Hobbes is more of a niche thing now, kind of a cult classic from the 80s and 90s, if you remember it. It deserved to be so much more. In our media-saturated world, no integrity points are given for limiting your exposure. If you don't get out there and get in front of audiences and let them see you and your work as often as possible in as many places, formats, and media as possible, you're probably going to be forgotten.